All right, guys, so we have another pedal, and it's from SoloDallas, which I love. I have so many of their pedals. This is their new SVDS Boost. This thing's really cool. I'm going to have to just go ahead and read off the description to explain to you what exactly this is doing. But it's very simple. Obviously, we have one knob, and then there's actually some trim pots on the inside, which I'll probably pop it out and take a look at it. And we might even make part of what we do messing with that a bit, because I'm pretty sure it's mostly just like a master volume of sorts from what it seemed like. But I feel like maybe there's some more experimentation that could be done to find out exactly what it's doing. But I love SoloDallas and all of their pedals. The thing that I love is a big goal of mine that I'm always trying to accomplish is just exaggerate my clean tone. I don't love pedals that heavily modify the EQ of the tone unless it's something that's necessary, like, you know, a mid-range bump, or kind of like what we experienced the Aspen do, the way it pushes mids. Like, I really enjoyed that. But sometimes there's tones that kind of sound like they're just like throwing a blanket on the guitar and it's just taking away so much and not just adding a little bit to it. So usually my preference is just going to be what's going to just exaggerate it. And I find that a lot of SoloDallas pedals do that, and that's why I love them so much. I was talking to somebody about the Storm the other day, and they were explaining how to them, the Storm is almost like on older consoles, or I forget exactly how he likened it, but they have a loudness button that essentially compensates for the loss of lows and highs that happens when you're listening at lower volumes. And sometimes it just naturally sort of attenuates those frequencies when you're listening to something on, like, you know, studio monitors at lower volumes. And the loudness button would compensate for that difference and add a little bit of lows and highs back. I feel like the Storm is kind of doing that to me. I feel like different SoloDallas pedals in general are kind of doing that to me. And they're just such unique circuits in and of themselves, because it's not just like this is a Klon clone or this is a Tube Screamer clone. They're actually doing something different. And a lot of them are just like really bizarre. Like, this is like a headphone preamp from this unit, and it adds this like preampy texture and grit and different things like that. It's so cool and different, and I love them for that reason, because it just usually exaggerates my clean tone and adds some really nice gritty character or something just interesting and different. So the SVDS Boost is an exact reproduction of the headphone amplifier within the Schaffer-Vega Diversity System, hence SVDS, wireless receiver, which was introduced in 1975. Originally designed for monitoring purposes, guitarists and bassists soon discovered they could boost their signal up to 30 dB by running a cable from the 1/4-inch headphone jack on the face of the SVDS receiver to their amp input and turn up the headphone volume knob. This hack was most famously used by Angus Young. So it's interesting, kind of back to my same point from before. It is an obscure pedal. Like, it's not just like a Tube Screamer or like a Klon or something like that. This is like, based on a headphone preamp. So I love the bizarre approach that they have for different pedals like this. I've played it before. It sounds really good. The first thing that stuck out to me is the way that it grabs certain harmonic information and creates additional dissonant notes within a chord voicing. And so it adds additional notes that you're not actually playing. You know, take that with a grain of salt. Essentially, I think a lot of folks know what I mean when I kind of describe it that way, where it's just creating extra harmonic notes. And so it was just really cool and inspiring. As far as EQ goes and how it sounds and feels, I do feel like it's a bit brighter. It can be, but when played by itself, it's fairly neutral. But yeah, it can quickly get brighter as you start to stack it with other drives. So we'll experiment with a lot of stuff. But in short, that's the SVDS Boost from SoloDallas. Let's take a listen to it. All right, so here we have the SVDS on my board, and I just kind of threw it in this location because then I wouldn't have to change anything on my RJM, and it is positioned very late in the chain. So for the most part, my goal is to use this in this application after drives, kind of see how it, you know, interacts with other drive pedals going into the amps hot and heavy. This time around, I have a JMI on my left ear and a Blankenship Twinplex going through a Supro cab in the right ear. They are a more aggressive combo when placed together. I'll show clean tone and just kind of a couple of my basic drives and everything, so we know kind of what to expect with this SVDS. But I guess before anything, let me show clean tone and then I will actually show SVDS. Also, it's worth noting you might not see me actually press this button here because it's wired up to my RJM switcher. So I will just kind of verbally let you know when I'm swapping on and off to that. So here's cleans. And then the SVDS. And once again, compared to cleans. So now if I actually use my SoloDallas little classic pedal that I've got here, it makes my tone a little bit richer, brings out some nice top end of the PAFs. So here is that. And then this is with the SVDS stacked on top of that. Very explosive. So let's just go ahead and turn the knob and see kind of exactly what we're working with here with the SVDS. So you can hear that like the drive character of it is actually baked in pretty aggressive, which is cool. So that just, for the most part, at least to me, means I need to get the volume set right, where it feels like it's kind of interacting with everything in a good way. Turn my overdriver on. Pretty gnarly. The overdriver is before the SVDS in this case, so let's keep turning that knob up and see what happens. Some of that sustain is what I was referring to earlier with that sort of like extra harmonic notes that you get. So, you know, I'm just playing, it's a 5 and a 3. And then the SVDS seems to draw out like a droning 1 underneath that in harmonic content. That like really deep boom start to flood in underneath those two notes that I'm not playing. And to me, that is so cool. I think that's just such a nice little hidden gem about the qualities of what the SVDS is actually bringing out in my tone. So cool. Also, it's just, since it's so aggressive, it's so easy to get a really meaningful, punchy, aggressive tone. Just playing a bunch of random notes at this point, but let's do something different here. So, I mean, I could max this thing out. Let's just do it for the sake of curiosity. So, I mean, it's wild. It is really big sounding, and I love that it's not seemingly adding, too much different tonal character. It does come off a bit warmer, but it's so interesting because the moment you stack it with a drive, it does get brighter. I guess it's the way that it kind of distorts that makes it do that. I've got the constant here. Let's go ahead and stack it with that. I'll have it set for something just a little cleaner. So that's the constant now with the SVDS. I do kind of like the way that it stacks with the constant because of the way that it compresses, the constant compresses. Rhythmically, it keeps it tight whenever I'm using the SVDS to boost it. If I go over to my kind of brighter classic Schaffer that I've got, it does, since it's not compressing as much, gets a little brighter. And then swap back over to the constant. Very tasteful. Yeah, those actually combine super well together. That's awesome. So keep that combination in mind. That's super cool. Now, let's just see what the overdriver's like with it. The overdriver's set a little bit louder, I think, than how the constant was just in. And add the SVDS now. Let me go ahead and throw on my little wide effect that I have with a like an eighth delay and a kind of light reverb. Let's take a moment, swap back to the constant, and do that same thing. It's very cool how I don't know, it's almost like it gets into a fuzzy territory with the way it interacts with other drives, but by itself, I wouldn't necessarily characterize it like that. Super cool. So I think the next thing that I would be curious about is I talked about that internal trim pot, and I'm just interested to see how us moving that around a little bit maybe changes things, whether positively or maybe not negatively, just differently, but maybe positively in a different way that I just might simply find more enticing, at least more than it already is. Okay, so I just turned it down nearly to minimum. Minimum actually completely cut it out. So now it's like really, really low, and we'll see kind of how flexible maybe it makes the knob on top. Okay, so off again. On. Now let's go to my first gain stage here. And then turn it on too. Okay, yeah, so far, that feels really cool. I do think it bought us maybe a little headroom. I don't really know how to explain, technically speaking, if that's what it did. But I do think that, I mean, it's maxed out right now, and I just have the internal really low. I don't know exactly how much, but it's just, yeah, it's really low. So, and what I did to kind of measure that was I left it on, and then I just listened as I was turning the internal trim pot, and I could hear it go from cutting out completely to just opening up a smidge. And that's essentially where we're at right now. But the way it's interacting with my first gain stage is a lot more transparent. I'm hearing it breathe more. It's not as fuzzy. So all of that was just SVDS in my first gain stage. Let's swap over to something like the overdriver. They were interacting with each other much more aggressively. So now this is just SVDS. I mean, it definitely does really interesting things to the tone as it sustains, and I think that comes back to a lot of the harmonic talk from earlier. Let's do the flip side and check now if we really turn it up on the internal pot, but have it really low. So this is now maxed out. It does sound similar with the internal all the way up and the top side really low. So that's where I'm thinking maybe it's not really adjusting gain properties and is maybe a form of like just master volume, perhaps. So that was just some of my common sort of reverb and delay effects with a big old wide effect from the Mobius and first gain stage and the SVDS. So let's now do like overdriver again. Which overdriver sounds like this by itself. It's probably at this rate worth rechecking so you remember. Now I'm curious, if I were to drop the volume of the overdriver to even like sort of like near first gain stage level or something like that, and then make it interact with the SVDS, if it would kind of just be a little less fuzzy perhaps. And then let's hear the constant with that now. Okay, so for a moment I was really sold on how it was like the internal really low and then maxed out on top, but that right there with the constant is just undeniably awesome. That was crazy. I'm gonna play again for a sec. Yeah, there is just something about the way it's interacting with the constants compression that is so chunky, but not just like wall of sound. And I'm a huge fan of that. So the last thing that we should do that I haven't done yet is take what is now really like maxed out on the inside and just turn it up more on the top side. I feel like I'm going to blow up my amps, so I'm going to do it within reason. So that's just the SVDS by itself. Let's see what it sounds like with like the first gain stage, because we don't need much to lean into it. I feel like some people would want to hear this. And, you know, if you know, you know. And that's all that needs to be said. Great. This is an awesome boost. I feel like I wouldn't do it justice without turning it up by itself past this point at internal maximum. So let's just do that to finish it out. Sweet. I mean, that's the SVDS. It's simple. It's one knob, technically, well, aside from what's on the inside. But now you know kind of what to look for when you're messing with the inside. SoloDallas is just always serving up some hot dishes that are really fun to play. So here's another one, SVDS. Go grab one.